Hi, everyone. I wanted to put this video out there just to address some things that came up over the past probably week, not just yesterday. And obviously, most of them are trolls. The other ones are just people. I guess they feel sorry for themselves because they're illiterate. I don't know. Maybe they're mad that they never found the treasure chest. But in any case, I wanted to explain to you why we're even doing the analysis to begin with. In this white text here, these are some examples of the comments, and they were from different people, right? They were posted on there. I deleted them, of course, and blocked these people because they're clearly very ignorant. But and obviously, I know some of them are trolls, but just look at some of this stuff, right? So why should we analyze the poem? Troy Horace hated English. Reading is not important. And then here's another one. No reason to analyze the poem. We just got to go to a map and find the clues. Yeah, that must be right. That's why we took 10 years. Anyway, the poem is not needed because this guy can't even, it doesn't even know how, you can't write properly. This is probably a 12-year-old, right? So I don't know. The poem is not needed because you can figure out where it was in the books by following the steps FF took. Okay. So Forrest Fenn never said we need to solve a 24-line poem that is a map to the treasure. All he said was go read all my books, understand my life history, maybe go to Ancestry, look up my grandparents, find out where country we came from, go back and pull out my war records. And, that's the way you find the treasure. Forrest did not require English. First of all, to this guy, too, you're supposed to capitalize the E in English. Anyway, this crap you're showing is special knowledge. Yeah, I guess Forrest put that out there, and he said no special knowledge is required. So that means understanding how to read and comprehend a poem is all of a sudden now special knowledge. These people obviously, to be honest with you, some of these are probably real because it was just based on looking at the forums and like just in general over your time during the treasure. Yeah, there are really people that think this way. They're really, really stupid. Um, they're probably flipping burgers at McDonald's. I, I don't know. I mean, I would never hire somebody like that. Anything, not even to cut my lawn. Hey, here's another one. Rednecks can't read. Right. Well, first of all, that's really a derogatory claim to make. He's saying all rednecks can't read. They can't read, and he wrote the poem for rednecks. You're a waste of time, bro. Yeah, well, yeah, here we have another, probably a 20-year-old. This one maybe a little. Of course, he doesn't know how to use spelling. He doesn't know how to spell either. It takes too long to type in 4 letters, an apostrophe, and re. But if he were to do that, he probably would have spelled it wrong and used your Y-O-U-R instead of U apostrophe R-E because they don't understand even the basics. So, like I said in my other video, first impressions mean a lot, right? So if these are not trolls, they're serious. If somebody ever sent me a letter and they wrote like this, I would just delete it because they're not even worth your time. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it. It's amazing. But, I guess this is why it took 10 years to solve the poem because nobody, including me for a while, didn't want to read the poem, right? Here's another one. Fenn was a fisher. You just got to go where he fished. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so I guess that's what the 9 Mile Hole people, maybe one of them are that sent that comment because that's all you need to know to find a chest, to find out that Madison Hole is, forget about the fact that he fished all over the place, but Madison Hole is special. Forget about the fact that the poem don't fit it because the poem has nothing to do with any solution, right? So now in green, this is my sarcasm here, right? More sarcasm. So I guess clauses, phrases, prepositions, infinitive, gerunds, objects, complements, predicate nominatives, and predicate adjectives, punctuation. Why care about all of that crap, right? Why worry about comprehending and reading the poem exactly as it's written? Forrest spent 15 years to slap a few random words in there. He never put any time or effort, even though he tells us that he struggled as a writer. Things don't come naturally to him, and obviously he didn't spend 15 years contiguously, but it took him 15 years. A good writer could probably write that 24-line poem in a day, but Forrest Fenn struggles with it, right? And he never, ever said anything about having to analyze the poem and moving with confidence. He just said, pick up that poem, man, and rush to that map, and that's how you solve it. You just go to a random map, and and you just start matching. That's not what he said. He said to read the poem and then understand the poem, and then basically solve the clues and marry them to a map. So if you haven't even read the poem correctly, or you read it incorrectly, you're already setting yourself up for failure. That's why we're analyzing the poem. We're not doing it to correct Forrest Fenn's grammar or to look for mistakes. We're not going to add anything or remove anything. All we're trying to do is read it exactly the way he wrote it, right? And after you do that, you could read the poem again now that you fully understand it, and start looking for how the clues interact with each other. What are we doing? For example, I've proven to you, and there's just no doubt about it, that in stanza 2, he does not tell you to go down the canyon. And this was what started it all. This goes back to 2015 when I got into an argument with Dow, right? And other people on Dow. You could probably go use the Wayback Machine and just look for Why Must I Go on there, talking about exactly that, the way that stanza is written. Now, I don't necessarily blame the people other than Dow, because you see, Dow is the one that went on his website and he decided to determine what the clues were. So he broke his forums up into phrases such as where warm water salt, canyon, uh, no place for the meek. He broke them up like that, and that's planted an image in everybody's head over the years that that's what you do. You pull out a map and then you find places synonymous with that. Forget about the context of the poem. You just go and you find those places on the map where they're all together, and then that must be the solve. So I kind of blame Dow for that. The grammar in the poem and analyzing it is obviously going to be a controversial topic. If you go to a website Dow's, it's going to cause conflict trying to discuss anything serious, because but I'd say 99% of the people on Dow's website were not thinkers. They were just looking for low hanging fruit. They were the Yellowstone searchers, all the newbies that were wandering around clueless, including me at one point, right? But I decided that I want to take this a step further and let's really look at the poem. Now, I wasn't becoming a poem purist yet. That didn't happen until 2017. But the point is that Dow is partially responsible because he took those clues out of context and separated them up into 9 different forums. What I would have done if I would have been in charge of that site, and that brings up another thing. I think Forrest Fenn should have made his own official site. Okay. We shouldn't have to go to Jenny's site and Dow's site to find important chase information. Dow's site and Jenny's site should be strictly fan sites. Anything official should have been done and managed by Forrest Fenn or his employees. It shouldn't have been done by a third party, because that would have also eliminated all of the stuff that we're seeing now at the end of the chase that people think that fraud occurred. And these people that worked with Forrest were paid off, right? So we would have been able to avoid that, number one. Number two, Forrest Fenn would have had full control over it, right? So maybe what happened that Dow did wouldn't have happened. I can tell you now that if I was in charge of the site, and I wouldn't have done that job, right? But if I was going to break down the poem, I would have done it a logical way. I would have broken it down by stanzas. Okay, I would have took stanza 1, stanza 2, stanza 3, stanza 4, blah blah blah, all around the stanza 6, and you discuss the stanza in its entirety. And I would have done it with threaded software, and I wouldn't have done it with blog software, because it's just not conducive to good discussion, right? I would have broken it up by stanza, and I believe that if we did that way back, if it was broken up by stanzas, we would have probably found the chest earlier, because people would have realized that you can't just take those clues out of context. You have to figure out how they're working in the poem. That's essentially why we're doing it, right? And we're not going to debate the fact that Forrest Fenn hated English. I think that you're misreading the book, Thrill of the Chase, if you think that way. And I mean, I can give you plenty of examples. For starters, What's the first chapter in that book, right? The first chapter is important literature, and he's discussing famous writers like Hemingway, right? And Fitzgerald, okay, and then Ballinger, right? He discusses poets in the book. He quotes poetry. Um, he's discussing English class, right? Now, a lot of people look at that and they're like, hey, look, he hated English class and he jumped out the window and left. They're missing the most important hint out there because he's talking about the sliding trick, how he jumped out the window when the sun was out. He would jump out the window, slide down the iron railing, and left a brown stain on the back of his pants, but he's seen freedom out there. But you're neglecting the fact and that he's discussing actually hints there that are related to help educate you what needs to be done in the poem. And you're going to learn that later, right? I'm not going to go over that now. But you got to look at things deeper, you know. And Forrest Fenn discusses tenacity there and his abuse of the word. But when you read that book, he's doing ultimately a lot of discussion about grammar and about reading and about writers and about learning things, okay? Not officially learning them in school, but learning them through experience, right? That's primarily what he's talking about. But that doesn't mean that he's saying that you know all you need are street smarts and you know. I would say honestly, you probably need eighth grade English at most. You don't need to go learn about writing styles like parataxis, hypotaxis, and study the different writers that were involved and look at Salinger's writing versus you know Lewis's writing in Alice in Wonderland, and you know that stuff is way that's now you're getting into advanced stuff that's in either in high school or even worse in college, right? And that's not totally necessary. If you do want to do that, you can go out and I'm going to tell you this now. Research the authors that he mentions, and they all have common styles. And those two words that I just dropped there, parataxis and hypotaxis, look up hypotaxis and parataxis and see what they mean. And they're different writing styles. Now relate them to the authors, and remember which books Forrest Fenn threw in the garbage, right? And but anyway, I don't want to get into that here. But the point is that you can't tell me that Forrest Fenn did not like English. Let me show you something here. I've showed this before, but this is a want ad from Texas, okay? And it's December 20th, 1949. So Forrest Fenn was 19. He was in junior college at that time, right? That's another thing. A lot of people think that he just got out of high school and that was it. He's uneducated. No. He spent 2 years in college. And primarily, yeah, of course, he played basketball, whatever he did in there in sports, but he was in college for 2 years. But I want you to take a look at this ad here. I need a copy of Modern English Readings. I have taken freshman English for 2 2/3 semesters without a textbook, but now I need something. It must be a textbook for his friend. Now, why would he do that? Why, if for somebody, okay, I think the average semester is 15 weeks, right? So at this point where he's filing this ad, he already spent 40 weeks in freshman English in college. 40 weeks. That's amazing. Why did he do that if he hated English? Why didn't he go in there for some other reason? Why would he take English? The thing that he's telling you that you're telling me he hated it so much in grammar school. Why on earth would he decide to take it in college? Why would he even go to college if he hated all of that stuff? Okay. It doesn't make sense. There's no way you can tell me that he didn't like grammar. All right. He did like grammar. And I think that he liked it because of that he knows that he could write something that's perfectly grammatically correct and he could convey meanings right in front of the reader's eyes and they don't see it. The other thing is grammar is basically a list of rules. He talks about rules all the time, keeping his list of rules whenever he learned something, and then he would adjust the rules and change the rules. Well, 109 rules. That sounds similar to English. It's probably got thousands of rules. English is pretty complicated, right? But we're only staying at a low level here. There's no way that he would have done extremely complicated stuff, right? Because then it would require extremely advanced reading. We have different types of sentences, right? We have simple sentences, and then we have compound sentences, and then we have complex sentences, and then we have complex compound sentences. Forrest Fenn uses complex sentences in the poem. Matter of fact, he uses them in many places. And basically, what a complex sentence is you have one independent clause and at least one dependent clause or subordinate clause. That's complex, right? If you have more than one of either of them, then it becomes compound complex. So Forrest Fenn uses that kind of writing in here. What the English teachers are going to do is they're going to start out with the basics and they slowly build on it, kind of like you're learning math, right? They're not going to come out there and begin with calculus. They're going to teach you basic arithmetic first, and then they're going to work your way up through the math. And English is kind of like math in that way, that if you goof off in the early years when you're learning the basics, you're going to be completely left in the dark when it becomes really complicated. And you can even see that stuff on Facebook where people are always posting these things where they're taking advantage of the order of operations, right? Because most people clearly, when you read, don't even know the order of operations. I would never have somebody like that. I mean, that's like extremely basic stuff. And some of them will even argue with you, curse and everything. No, you don't. Orders of operations, you need parentheses to do that. No, that's not the way it works. Well, it's the same thing with English, right? There's a structure to the language, and words and phrases and clauses are building blocks in order to construct a sentence that has a complete meaning to it, right? So understanding the relationship between how all of those are connected becomes extremely important, because if you don't know how to understand that, you're not going to comprehend what you're reading. All right, that's the whole reason why. And then ultimately, once you do that, once you've broken it down into phrases and clauses, right? Now you're at the point where it's easier for you to go ahead and break down the individual words in there, because now you know what the main subject is, what are the main verbs, what are the helping verbs, linking verbs. You have everything ready for you now. That's the purpose of doing that. We're older now, but if we were still in school, we wouldn't have to do this. Like the way I'm breaking it down and drawing all these lines and showing you the connections, a lot of children, if you pay attention in school, you wouldn't have to do that. Just by reading it, when you read it, you would look at it and you would know that, right? That's why I say, like, if you showed it to a third grader, begin it where warm water's halt and take it in the kind of down, and then you ask them, what is the subject for halt and take? They're going to tell you that it was warm waters, right? Ask any English teacher, anyone. Now, a first grader won't know it. Second grader ain't going to know that. Maybe third. I don't know specifically which year they teach that. And in third grade, the only issue they might run into is the fact that we have the word that there, and it's a dependent clause, and so on and so forth. So, but you could simplify it to that example that I used the other day, where I was talking about run and play in the park, right? They both, whenever you have, a coordinating conjunction joining two verbs like that, and it's joining the verbs because there's no comma at it, right? And just by looking at um, you're going to know it's joining two verbs when you go through and find the verbs, right? So the fact that they share the same subject when they're linked like that is not something that you have to really research. It's just common knowledge, right? I hit the ball and ran to first base. That's an example of that. Hit and ran. I hit the ball. The ball is the object that I hit, and I ran, right? So I hit and ran. It's connecting hit and ran. Where did I run? To first base. All right. So it's very simple. It's not something you have to think of. Okay. But if you put a comma before the and, in that case, it would completely change the meaning of that. And I'm not going to rehash this because you know it. Now, if you look through Forrest Fenn's poem, you're going to find a lot of places where he has compound verbs. There's also a possibility, although he doesn't do this, you can have compound subjects. You can have compound objects, compound complements, compound prepositional phrases. So it's important that you break it down for that reason. And like I said, but let's not even get into the fact that Forrest Fenn didn't like English. And the bottom line is that Forrest Fenn said that he struggles to write. If he hated English, he wouldn't be writing books. Why did he write 7 or 8 books, right? But if he struggles to write, that would explain why it might have taken him 15 years. If he needed to slap together that poem and he didn't care about making the poem accurate, then he wouldn't have wasted time. He wouldn't have wasted 15 years on it. But you got to realize that Forrest Fenn, when he created the poem, and now, like I said, I'm not correcting his grammar, but when I analyzed it so far, I only pointed out the one issue that I found. So, other than that, the poem is completely grammatically correct. And that kind of makes sense because he said to hand it to a kid, right? And he also wrote it for a purpose to find a treasure. So, he needs to assume that the reader understands how to read, at least at 8th grade level. Because if he wasn't able to assume that somebody would read, he would have an awful hard time trying to write something that would be concise, precise, have no subterfuge, and be an accurate map to something. So he had to make sure that everything was made sense, grammatically. But he even had an additional problem about that. He wasn't coming out and naming anything directly. Now he had something further complicated because he needed to make the poems so that the clues so that eventually when you figure them all out, you can actually find those locations on a map. And he had to do that indirectly. Also, he said that it's a map. Most of the time when you have a map, it has the destination on the map. Like my Disney example, I can give you a map to Disney. It's going to show you how to get there from the north, south, east, west, right? It's got a destination. But Forrest Fenn created a treasure map. He's not going to give you the destination because that would literally be a map that tells you right where to go, right? Right. So when they're creating a map for Disney, like I said, they have a problem. They don't know where the person using the map is coming from. So what they try to do is they provide a set of different instructions depending on where you're coming from, right? So Forrest Fenn, and because this was a treasure hunt, he's not going to give you the ending. So the one thing that he had to do is make sure that he gives you a poem such that you can accurately determine the starting point because he doesn't know where you're starting from, right? And he's already told us that beginning where warm water salt and somewhere north of Santa Fe is not enough information to find out where warm water salt. So if the first thing you're doing is going to Dow's website and seeing that there's a clue called where warm water salt, and you know that Forrest once said that's the first clue, and he said it's important to solve the first clue, and you crack open a map, you already broke the rule because he told you that that's not enough information to find the location. You need the rest of the clues. He said that to us, right? So clearly that. And he had another reason for saying it was actually a hint. If you were to put break that line out, take that line out that says, begin it where warm water salt, right? You just take that out of context, remove it from the poem and say, there's your first clue, right? Well, you'd be breaking the poem because right there you just took a dependent phrase, right? And you split it between the two verbs that were connected. So now you have an income. Not only do you have you only have a fragment, right? You also have a broken clause, right? That's left hanging and it's incomplete, right? And and even more, if you look at it that way, your mind, okay, your mind doesn't see the take down there, right? Take it into counting down. It's looking at beginning where warm or salt. And in that context, okay, it's true. If you didn't have a conjunction and after it, it's true that you would be the one that is going to go to where warm or salt, right? Because it's only one verb. So you see what I mean about removing things from context. So he gave us a hint there that you can't do that, right? And yet people still do it, even to this day, you know. And that's another thing. At this point in time, I'm putting effort into this, and there's no reward at the end. The chess is gone, right? I'm just trying to teach people. So if people aren't going to agree with me that The warm waters are what take it. It conveys it into the canyon down. Then don't even watch my videos. Don't come around here. Certainly don't comment. I'm just going to block you because you clearly don't understand what I'm trying to explain. And you clearly lack the skills to correctly solve the poem. It's as simple as that.